So I recently rewatched Split, and while I still agree with most of the issues I had with the film, I think it works as a great showcase of how you can use difference and opposites in filmmaking and editing to easily convey information to the audience. Spoilers ahead. Let's start at the very basics with tone, or more specifically changing the tone of a scene. An equal but opposite cut can help ease the transition from one feeling to the next. So for a simple example, cutting from a downward shot weakening the characters to an upward shot when they achieve something, empowering them. And you can also use this technique to cut between scenes, transitioning audiences from dangerous environments to a safe one. Right, so let's see a less clear example, using a difference in the space of a scene to change the tone. In the abduction at the beginning, the scene entirely plays out outside of the car, maintaining some distance from the characters. However, the moment Casey realises something is wrong, we cut to inside the car, making it feel closer and more involving. And also utilising a 180-degree cut to heighten the reveal. Now this change from outside the car to inside the car may seem very small, but it's something that needs to be taken into account in editing. Going back and watching the trailer after making the first draft of this video, I realised there was actually a shot taken out of the film, showing the abduction from outside the car. Which is understandably let out, seeing as it ruins the tension by putting distance between the audience and the attack. Anyways, let's reverse back a moment to this cut, as I get to my second point, perspective. So in this case, cutting from an image of a person to their point of view, a 180-degree cut. The obvious benefit to using this style over shots including the person is that it immediately puts the audience into the mindset of the character. For instance, in the locker scene, this is used to heighten the tension as the audience are experiencing a similar lack of sight. You can see this being played very heavily in first-person horror games of this generation. As well as in the case of this particular scene, having the camera anywhere else would lessen the claustrophobic feel, as it's implying there's literally no space to go but inside the head of the character. But mainly, this perspective is used to signify importance to a character and can effectively be used as an emotional close-up. What I mean by this is that regular close-ups are used to convey necessary information to the audience, something relevant for the plot. However, if we use an example from earlier when a character is looking at a painting and it cuts to their perspective, it's not a shot implying the painting is actually important to the plot, but it's implying it means something to the character. So for something similar we can look to Cameron with his painting in Ferris Bueller, or Travis with his Alka-Seltzer. It shows how characters can make thematic connections within their own heads, either with inanimate objects or with memories. And you can see this in Split, when Casey comes to the realization that she's now prey.
See, you didn't used to like to come out here. This is like our family tradition, right?
Good shot, big brother.
I have your meal, sleepyhead.
So we've seen using opposite cutting to represent being inside of someone's head, but now let's look at how you can convey similar things outside of a person. For instance, moving a camera away from a person as they're deforming, and zooming when they're reforming. This is my third point, character. It's the same process as before, using the environment and the camera to belittle or empower a character, only this time it's due to internal changes, not external. You can see this come into play in Benny's appointment scene, as the camera closes in tighter as the questioning gets more intense. And then once it's revealed he was actually Dennis all along, he relaxes and the camera releases its grip. Now I just cut something very important out of that scene, which adds a whole other context to this device as well, as throughout this interrogation the film keeps cutting back to the therapist, whose shot remains still, demonstrating her remaining calm and maintaining control throughout the scene. And the dichotomy between these two shots really show the balance between the characters, which brings me through to my final point, relationships. So while the previous scene was more showing heightened juxtaposition between characters, let's look how editing can use opposites to dictate the actual dynamic. In an earlier example, we already saw how cutting from outside the car to inside was giving us a sense of proximity to danger and entrapment. And in a later scene, this idea crops up again, when the psychiatrist is trying to reach out to Kevin. While one is open, the other is enclosed. However, as she talks to him and their dynamic changes, one camera pulls forward, closing the gap and removing the barriers, representing a shift in trust. But perhaps that's too subtle for you, and you really want to make sure that your audience instinctually feels that something is now different. That's when the 180-degree rule comes in. Now, I'm pretty much certain every one of you knows the 180-degree rule of filmmaking, but if you don't, here's your chance to pause the video and look it up before I continue. Done it? Great. So let's break that rule. So in the case of Split, whenever it wants to make a sudden change in a relationship, it will break this rule, such as an action causing a character to trust someone, and the scene changing completely. However, this is ultimately a thriller, and an obvious component of thrillers is where the power lies in a relationship, and throughout these films it typically jumps back and forth between protagonist and antagonist. So in Split, the 180-degree rule can essentially be broken down to just a marker of who is in control. So what could be seen as one character changing their minds could also be seen as another gaining control over them. To get this across, let's simply look at a moment where the power literally swings sides.
Thank you, Hedwig. Everything's fine now.
Kevin went no ground.
Kevin is asleep. We've made him sleep far away. You can call his name all you like, dear, but he's not going to hear you.
With the reveal of new information, the camera is breaking convention to create an uncanny feel and a noticeable change in the scene. And in this particular case, it also has the added benefit of moving the blocking. This moment alone is proof that a quote-unquote rule of filmmaking is only as important as you let it be. So with that established, let's look at the scene with Hedwig and the walkie-talkie. We start with these awkward opposite shots to accentuate the comedy of the scene. However, while these may look to be shot straight on, they're actually slightly to the side of the characters, as you can tell by the eye lines. So we've established which side of the scene this 180-degree rule is taking place. And this continues through Casey trying to convince Hedwig to stay, until he breaks off and comes towards the camera. The dynamics of the scene have shifted as Casey now has something to escape with. We remain on the side for a while Casey realises that it's real, and Hedwig eventually tries to fight her for it. However, once she's fended off Hedwig, that's when the camera now breaks the rule again. And not only that, but it's now jarringly moving back and forth across the line, conveying visually to the audience that not only is the power now in question, but also that Hedwig is changing. Eventually Kevin completes his change, and the power shifts one final time to establish the victor. So within a single scene, we've used the 180-degree rule for a reveal, confusion, transformation, and shifting power. I guess the point I'm trying to make with this video, besides all the examples, is that if you're ever having difficulty trying to convey a tone, character, or relationship within your own projects, maybe the simplest solution is to just do the opposite.